So we are now going to talk about one of the most fascinating subjects in conclusions of Eriugena's work about human nature. In this chapter, we're going to talk about angels in paradise. Eriugena says that angels were created in human nature. So what does this actually mean? So there's two ways of looking at human nature. From the presently actualized reality, that means in itself in the world, in itself it is temporally caused, subject to accident, and generated among effects. And then we have the aspect of its natural potency, in its reason in the word, in its cause, eternal, causal, simple, and created as intelligible. Same thing can be thought of as two, so the same thing can be thought of as two, since it can be known in its effects and in its causes. So we connect here everything we said about God himself, we're saying about human nature. The two things are connected. The anthropology of Eriugena, remember, is theocentric. So then the alumnus, the student, is going to ask the master who's doing the argumentation, so then would it have not been better if God had created all things in angelic rather than in human nature? And the answer is that some things exist in human nature, not in angelic nature. In the five senses, the ideas of the sensitive objects and the reasons and inquiries into the nature of things. This is done because there has to be a connection. Human nature is the intermediary between the corporeal through the senses and the spiritual through the intellect. So they're both gathered into one. So humans have this special place in nature, being the intermediaries between spirit and the world. So the conclusion is that human nature both is and is not what it was intended to be. This is going to explain what we were talking about, the fall. The fall is going to become a very interesting, important concept in all of this. So Eriugena represents the reconciliation of the Eastern views of human nature and the Western views of human nature in early Christianity. The Eastern philosopher that Eriugena will take cues from will be Gregory of Nyssa, specifically on this point on the making of man. We're going to do videos about Gregory of Nyssa. There were two creations in relation to human nature for Gregory of Nyssa. One was the first in which the body and the soul were created together, and the second whereby human being is born into this world. So the reconciling happens between Gregory of Nyssa and St. Augustine in Eriugena. Eriugena as intermediary between Eastern and Western ideas. So, what Eriugena argues is that it is not sufficient to say that the corporeal body that was added in Gregory of Nyssa's account is the animal body discussed in the account of Augustine, and that Augustine simply omitted mention of the spiritual body created initially in the image of God. The body that Augustine had called animal is actually praised and blessed as spiritual. So what Eriugena is trying to do here is to reconcile both natures into one. This is why he arrives to a very interesting conclusion, which is that Eriugena's own portrayal of human nature as having been created in the genus animal, the ultimate solution, so in order to solve this dichotomy, is to reconcile Eastern and Western authorities on the question of two creation, lies in Eriugena's repeated assertion that both were simultaneous. Okay, so that means that the account that we have in Genesis, that's why it's not going to be materialized into paradise until the end, until the eschaton. Okay, so he takes the beginning as the end. And he says that the actual idea of paradise cannot be manifested until the end, because in the beginning, man was created already as we know it, although from the essence of human nature. Yeah, but there is a simultaneity in the creation of the two. We could talk about how for a modern mind this could make sense, but I think it's a really fascinating idea, and we are definitely going to explore it, because I think it's at the core of exactly what we need to delve into in order to think about contemporary issues. Thank you.